bathrooms.
No bathrooms. Yes, I had a feeling. I saw a tweet about Ottawa and it being a similar thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I meant Ottawa.
Ottawa, okay.
I knew you'd.
She knew it.
Yeah, well. Yeah, no, well, first of all, there's like all these exhaust fumes. You can imagine when that many trucks are like clogging all the streets.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's people with Confederate flags and Nazi signs all over the place. And a bunch of like white nationalists came to town, and it's a lot of violence and ugliness. And I guess there's no guns because it's Canada, but everything else. Yeah.
And you know, if they storm the White House and they spread their feces in there, it seems that that's a trope for them, I guess. I don't know.
They were on their way to Parliament House, and I saw a picture of Trudeau in some sort of safe room that they had put him in somewhere secretly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
one of his kids has COVID.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Shit.
One of his kids has COVID?
Yeah.
I guess that's another reason why he's in a safe house.
Yeah.
It's another reason that he went into quarantine, I guess, because that was probably the exposure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ping Skylar and Ingrid and see if we can get them here. All right. Oh, here, Skylar, look at that. Speak of the devil. All right. I hope Ingrid's not snowed out of the proceedings. There we go. Welcome, Skylar. All right. So we're just waiting on Ingrid. I think we should probably get going and then rope her in at 6 after. So, what was that hat? See, Carlton, can you put the hat back on? What you got there? Falcons? Is that a Falcons hat? No?
My Eagles.
High school. Okay.
The Eagles.
All right. Fair enough. Where'd you go to high school? What town?
I went to McDonough in Maryland. In Maryland.
Maryland. Far up. Excellent. Okay. I don't know. KJ, do you want to go first? That's a yes? I'd rather not.
That's a yes. It's okay.
Yeah. And you know what I'd like you to do? I'd like you to pick the person who comes after you when you're done.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Give you the power.
Okay. I guess I missed a really good meeting last week that I have no idea what went on in it.
Yep, you did.
And but I can see why it was so great, because I loved the stuff that we were reading for that. Probably more than I liked the stuff for this week. But something that I was thinking about when I was reading the Fred Waugh interview was when he was saying you don't have to understand poems, you just experience them. I was thinking back to the first week when we had the Charles Olson said that, where he said something about the more literate you are, something like that, the easier it is to understand a poem. Come at it like you're a rock or a tree or something like that. It seemed to go together. I thought that they were actually talking probably about the same thing. And I always liked reading about not getting caught up with all of this prescribed ways to write a poem, which I did for many years, instead of just letting it happen. So I appreciated that. And even I feel like the long piece on the Basho was getting around to sort of that same thing, where maybe at the beginning he was tied in. Now I might have gotten this wrong, but he was tied into more of the structure, and at the end he was into more of the experience, or the emotion, or the heart of the poem. So I can see how all these things are tying in together. And I really like the idea of traveling poems and diaries. I traveled to a lot of the places that one from the week before, when they went to Merida and they went to Isla Mujeres and around there. I've been Chichen Itza, I've been to all those places. And so it was really, really fun for me to read those. And if I'd have been there last week, I would have actually shown you some pictures of places that we stayed on Isla Mujeres, which was in hammocks for 50 pesos a night and things like that. So, but I just think I have some writing about that, but I never thought at the time to do some poems about it. So I don't know if people go back and do the poems afterwards, or you could do that or not, you know, to pick up on something that sticks out. What else do I have to say? I sent you one thing that I wrote, which if I'm going to read something, I would like it to be that. And if you want to pull that up, or else I can, because I don't know how to do it from my end.
Okay, when did you send?
Oh, I don't know. It was like Wednesday, Thursday.
Okay, let me just do. 26th. Okay, yeah. Oh yeah. Where we have it? Awaken Every Day. Is that the?
Yeah.
Okay. That. Oh, here it is. I got it. Oh yeah. I read this. Okay. So let me just go back to security. Allow people to share screen. Share screen. Ah, here comes. Who is that? Somebody's
Oh, we
coming.
have a name.
Somebody's coming in. And then here we
Oh,
go.
Ingrid's coming. Good.
Good. All right, KJ, is that here? Let me
That
make
is it.
Let me just. Is that big enough, or can I?
Mm-hmm. That's fine.
Okay.
All right, here we go. My husband asks if I want cigarettes. A generous gesture from a man who quit decades ago. But I don't smoke. But I do. When my grown children refuse to speak to one another, when my mother dies, when I wander outside at night and wonder, what will I do the next day? I light one up from the hard-cornered golden white box because I don't want red blend wine or a vicarious TV paranormal experience, or even the daily thought from Awaken Every Day. When my father died, I realized he didn't know me. When my mother died, I realized she didn't know me anymore. So my traveling is mostly around my backyard. So that's about all I think that I have to say.
I understand. It's like a mic drop.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to stop the share because people like to read it again and leave it up there for a little bit so people can go back to it and rehave the experience of the poem, which is just remarkable. You know, the endings in the Fred Waugh interview, we talked about painfully predictable, how to avoid a painfully predictable ending. And I'm wondering how you came to this ending, because it seems to me very organic, and it seems to me also very powerful. Here comes Susan back. Let me let her in. So can you take us through the composition of that?
Mostly it was just as you're saying, pretty in the moment, pretty well just things coming in from all sides. And there's something about smoking that always, whenever somebody asks me if I smoke, I always say I don't smoke, which I usually don't, but I do in some cases. And so I always wonder, probably the person that really knows me is just my husband now and knows those sorts of things about me. And I just, as I told you when I was writing to you, is that it's just so much introspection right now. And these things they just happen on top of each other, the thoughts. And somehow a lot of it is just connected, just turns right around and it has a thought from my mother passing. So it just happened. That's about all I can say.
Yeah. So it wasn't an ending that you kind of cooked or had the end. See, that's the thing. That's what I'm talking about. I think when you can write in the moment and put yourself in the moment, I think things like this happen. You know, you're tapped in, and plus your mom's working for you on the other side. I'm convinced of that. And she's
Right.
working for you for your highest soul experience. And I think poetry is that. A couple of thoughts. I probably said this before, but in Chinese medicine, each meridian is connected with a main organ, and the heart and an emotion is associated with it. And the heart and lung meridian is connected to grief. So I always see cigarette smoking or marijuana smoking, I always see lung drugs as a grief response. My parents get divorced, I develop a marijuana habit, you know. I've mentioned it in poems, you know, Morris Graves and his smoking when I went down to do my residency at the lake. And so for me, it's a very, very direct connection between those two things. And it seems to be very clear in this poem as well. So, you know, the fact that, you know, we can think in terms of the objective correlative, like what is the right image to represent this, which I think is a backwards way to do it. You put the images that were first and foremost, and then they happen to have this resonance that certainly some people can pick up on. I mean, you can read the poem and just itself, it has this elegiac feeling. And of course you end with your, you know, your relationship with your dad, your relationship with your mom, and the relationship with your kids, which just tears me apart because, you know, my daughter's not speaking to me, and that's a hard thing to deal with. So it's amazing, you know, you get one poem a week like that, holy shit, it's amazing. And you know, in terms of travel, I've got a workshop exercise that I'm going to deploy probably tonight. I'll have the workshop materials for next week up tonight that I think will allow you to go further down that path. So.
Okay, thank you.
There was also one thing about in the beginning when you're talking about Olson and how to receive a poem and whether you understand it or not.
Yeah.
You know, I was watching a panel that was on Black Mountain Poetics, and it was a really shitty panel. And Duncan McNaughton walked out on it because they were basically saying Charles Olson was a racist, and you know, all this kind of, I don't want to use it in the pejorative, but just to give you some sense, this kind of woke approach, which I don't want to be seen as using right-wing tropes, but let's just use that for a moment to give you a sense. And went back to some of Michael Richardson's work. I think it's Michael Richardson who wrote the San Francisco Renaissance. Maybe I'm getting his name wrong. He wrote about McClure, and this was before Dolphin Skull came out. And he said, you know, what's basically the message of McClure? It's basically the same message as romantic poetry. So he kind of dismissed it as that. But I wanted to twist that around. What's the ultimate message of Miles Davis? Or the ultimate message of Charles Mingus or Thelonious Monk? You know, does it really matter? You know, you listen to their music, you love it, it does something for you, it changes your consciousness. Isn't that good enough? And I think that's really important to consider it that, which using poetry as a sound medium, I think begins to put you more squarely in that realm. So those are things that I would want to bring up. And despite that, you know, the messages I get from McClure is that Huayan Buddhism is a very potent source. Dogen is a very potent source. One can use the concepts from these two ancient wisdom traditions to fully enhance one's life and one's poetry and one's poetics. So I could go on about the content, but the important thing is, you know, what does it deliver for you? Does it deliver transcendence? Does it deliver a transmission of energy? Those are some of the things I would say about that. So,
Okay.
beautiful poem.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Who's next, KG?
Oh yeah, I forgot I have to pick. I want to pick on Tim.
Pick on.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's because you know that I was doomed this week. Although Paul, am way too familiar with Audacity now because I had to edit a radio show this weekend. How the learning curve is, it was high anxiety in my world. But I interviewed old friend of mine, Lindsay Lane, who's a poet. She read some poetry on the air. We had a great conversation. She and I were both part of the Austin scene during the 80s when there's quite a zeitgeist going on of regional creativity. But because of that, I'm lacking on some of the exercises this week. Although I did love the Fred Waugh interview, Paul. The one thing that I noted a couple times is you guys both corrected or finished quotes from different people, and just that you guys pull that shit out of the air is amazing, man. That was so great to watch.
Please easy on the shit references when talking about something connected to Canada. If we can do that, that'd be
All
great.
right. But he also I maybe mentioned last week that I had rewatched My Dinner with Andre, the movie, and I'm telling you, Fred was glowing like Andre Gregory was. When you let him go, when he started it was truly amazing. Of course, favorite thing popped up then, Anthony Braxton, his favorite jazz guy right now. I saw him perform back in the day. He came down and put his compositions on a local group here in Austin called the Creative Opportunity Orchestra. And I actually ended up writing a handful of little continuing poems on postcards to my family this week. I saved one of them for you guys. What else? Oh, I got to read the thing. So she said, is how he entered it into the, I tried to go back and find out who he was talking about. Remember, detachment with stimulated emotion is the statement of a fleeting phrase or a glimpse of a remembered scene, is a signal to catch this now or it will be gone forever. Being on the precipice of the edge of something that might happen, being open to that's the opening there. Was who said that? Do you remember? He was quoting somebody.
Margaret
Anyway.
Avison.
Ah, thank you. The
Say that again.
Margaret Avison, wasn't it?
Anyway, that was the base. I basically did cover poems of that statement for my postcards, and then Fred came up with, which he says he got from Creeley. The Fisher-Price version is what I call it. Of if you get stuck in your writing, just go back and pick up a stitch, and take one or two steps back. A very simple way to play, if you like, in the writing, which I loved also. I did get to do a couple of artist dates for myself this week. I got to see this amazing performance by the Wooster Group called B-Side, where these guys took the, did I write it down? Took a recording. They actually played the record and sort of interpreted it and sang along with it, of a record by a man named Bruce Jackson, and it was recordings of the Negro folklore from Texas State prisons. And then he also had some text he would read. There were three guys. One of them was out with COVID, so they were missing one of the voices in the harmonies, but oh, it was just this. I was a little freaked out because the space was packed, although everybody had to show a vaccination card and a boost card and wear a mask during the event. But oh, it was really, really beautiful. And then I was able to use some of those prison songs. The interview I did with my friend Lindsay Lane, she does a writing program in a women's prison here in Texas. And so I was able to use some of that in the interview too. What else? heard a great podcast from this gal, Booker. She's a Buddhist, and she does work in prisons with people, teaches meditation in prisons. And she has this great little ritual of when she enters a room and she grounds herself, and she says, enter a room like a cat. The cat enters a room, sits, and scans the whole room before entering to find places of safety and places of danger. Open your eyes wide and see, oh, it's this great little ritual, which I'm going to steal. Anyway, Linda?
You've got dogs and cats covered then. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Exactly right. Linda, you're up next. Oh, well, unless Paul has to.
Oh, yes.
Oh, no,
yes,
I've got my
Paul.
poem.
Okay, that would be better.
I forgot. Braxton Sachs was burning red hot. A dragon's flame spit each fleeting phrase. Those in the front row were surely came away singed. My skin pricks up with the glimpse of that remembered scene right now.
How long ago was the Anthony Braxton concert?
So that was in the 80s.
See, going back to old material, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I think the old material is still potent. If it's not potent, it won't give you a poem, right?
Right.
It's
No,
KJ
it was a pretty amazing show too, and he was very high.
What was his marijuana?
I'm guessing. Yeah, because he was functioning. I mean, it's some pretty crazy jazz, and but the guys in that Creative Opportunity Orchestra, they would invite these guys in, specifically that level of dude, and blow people's minds.
The Worcester Group, one of the original founders was Willem Dafoe, and he mentioned that in his SNL monologue last night.
Oh,
It was very interesting. So it's how it's come up. The Worcester Group has come up here in 12 hours, 2 references within 12 hours. And he's also from Appleton, Wisconsin. So if you go back and watch the monologue, they've got a couple of people there doing their Wisconsin accent, which is kind of Canadian, a little bit like Bob and Doug, and talking about the bubbler and the official state hobby of the state of Wisconsin, which is driving while intoxicated. And then the cat reference I wanted to share. A cat entering a room, since you mentioned that, and I saw on Instagram a similar, not exact, right, like you're saying, but similar cat entering a room, and I sent this to my ex-wife so she could show our daughter. Wasn't this cat video? Wasn't that cat video? Wasn't that cat video? There's lots of great cat videos. This one here, I hope that you comes through in a good way. Oh, you can't hear the music? Can you hear the music? Can't hear the music. Okay, here, the music. Okay, so you get the idea. Cat, you probably don't have a different entry for the cat, but they have to write music too, I think is important.
yeah.
Yes. So going back to old material, that was a little bit of the Paul Celan idea, was to go back over old material and do 2 versions of it, so you can kind of get a sense of how you play with different possibilities. There's a little bit of grafting in that as well. And if you guys probably remember the grafting exercise, if not, I can whip that out again, or you can find it on my site. All right,
No,
so-
like I said, I played with it in my correspondence with my family. I had 5 or 6 versions went out.
Yeah, that's another thing you can do with postcards is you can do slight. That's a beautiful use of postcards. Fantastic, Tim. Okay, you have the power.
And Linda, you're up.
Well, I'll just start out by saying everything he said about the Fred Waugh thing. I made notes on exactly the same points about the going back and picking up a stitch and the Avison quote and everything. Loved it. This was a good week of material. I started out bang on as soon as we got it. I read half the Basho thing and by Sam and read a couple of other bits, but today I actually sort of put them all kind of in the order they came in. And it made sense, eh? You should do that more often. What do I have to talk about? The curriculum of the soul. Yeah, that was one of it. And the reason nobody commented last week is that you've got it linked wrong. Okay. Because I just really got off on that because, I've done some collaborative things with people. I actually just, Nose and Book Publishing just did a chapbook. And this is, it's called Wild Swings, and it's the La Romita poets. And this was a group of us that were supposed to go to Italy in June of 2020. And of course, that got kiboshed thanks to COVID, as things still are. And anyway, we met anyway and did a Zoom thing and then decided we should have a chapbook, and guess who got to do the chapbook? But anyway, yeah, we're launching it on the 22nd of Feb. I'll send you the link when we get it.
Did you get any dough to do that?
No. I mean, everybody bought their copies, at
Yeah.
very cheap. And
Yeah.
I underestimated the shipping costs. So, but anyway, no, it was a fun little project. And yeah, and also that's my kid on the cover when he was a baby.
Jesse.
Yeah. What else did I want to talk about? Anyway, all the stuff was good. I'm going to be listening to that Fred interview again because it is so good. There's so much in it. And I have to say, I winced at the part when he talked about the, how did he put it? Being the colonized mind thing and Old English poetry and all that kind of thing. My dad, he had my dad for senior matric, which is like, used to be first year university. And my dad taught that course at the high school, and Fred is a little bit older than I am, so they weren't doing it at the time I went through. But I think he was in one of the last senior matric classes that Dad taught. And my father, although he came over from England as a baby, had an English accent his whole life because the whole family did. And actually this week I was at my sister's place and she was getting rid of some books, and she said, have a look and see if there's any books you want to get, before I get rid of them. And there was this one called Poems Worth Knowing. And on the inside it says Gerald H. Lee, his book. That was my dad. And it's like all these old English, and there's some Canadian stuff, but really old, like from the 20s. But it's annotated in places, and scansion is marked and all this kind of thing. It was so neat. So needless to say, I nabbed that. So that's my show and tell, other than I did get a poem today. Now we're going to play Linda Downer because it's kind of heavy. Oh, but there's a redeeming one I got right at the end. Can I do a screen share, Paul, please? Okay. There it is. There it is. How about that? Okay, it's called Game, and wrote it this afternoon at about 1 o'clock. Yesterday, my husband's sister sent him the link for playing Wordle, thinking it would be good for his brain. I just spent 20 minutes attempting to explain its intricacies. All right, he says, don't rush me. I'm a-thinking and my head hurts. I'm not happy with my sister-in-law. Now my husband's really confused and feeling stupid, and I'm realizing, again, why I never wanted to become a teacher, for I have the patience of my cat when his dish is empty. Before we got into Wordle, my husband said he wanted to talk about Duhamel Creek, which threw me off for a bit because that is the creek that fed water to our taps and toilet when I was a kid. He meant Dumont Creek, the little cemetery up the valley we visited last fall, driving up and up a potholed Kootenai road until we found the clearing surrounded by old growth pines and firs, and walked among the mounds of hand-dug dirt covered with tchotchkes. We've talked about ending our days there. He's feeling fragile in his 82nd year, his body failing on various fronts, his mind not far behind as he struggles with the concept of mortality, an elusive 5-letter word tries out ones like grave, corpse, plant, final, mourn. Needs to say that's very new. I got another one though, as I was watching the end of the Fred interview, Paul, just now, like this was at 2 minutes to 4, sorry. And it goes like this, proprioception. Fred must know music at the heart of thinking, acronyms to mathought. Or is it mathought? That's me.
Wait. Oh,
you
shit. Hold on a second. What the hell? Sorry about the cat video came up again. Okay, you can't hear.
Oh,
Talk about a 1-2 punch. Mamma mia. And those are
I
some
haven't been able to write anything for like, basically since my mom died, I've had nothing.
Well,
and-
you know, I mean, come on.
And my poetry group of 4 is meeting tomorrow, and been sending stuff out for us to critique, and I hadn't done anything yet. And this morning there was a message from one of us saying, "Are you all right?" Kind of thing. And so I basically wrote the beginning of this as prose, as just as a response. And I said, I really don't have anything. And then I said, oh wait, and boom, out it came.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are good Wordle words too. For those of you who play Wordle, you may just want to copy those down and have them somewhere.
Starting out with piano is good because you get 3 vowels right off the bat.
Piano. Look at
Starting to figure out
this.
there's tricks.
Wordle hacks is what they
Yeah.
are. Well, gorgeous poem. When you talk about spending, how did you say? I'm glad you still keep this up. Talked about ending our days there. Do you have a place, or just move to there, or what's it? What do you talk? What's the reference there?
Oh no, this is the cemetery, ending those days.
Oh, you're talking about the cemetery. I envision you going up there. I see. You don't know where you're going yet.
No,
I see.
no.
Knowing you have about 25 years.
Yeah.
You and your family.
I'm
Yeah.
not feeling any particular urgency myself. Oh, and the part in italics there, that's a Yosemite Sam line.
Oh, is that right? There we go.
Yeah, because I'd done and because when I was this afternoon, when I was going through and reading all the stuff that we were to do and read, I thought, oh, I haven't looked at that. And so I just had a quick glance and I thought, I'll just see if I can stick anything in anywhere. So there.
Oh, I love that Carlton anagrammed it and it came out my easiest ohm. That to me is just classic. It's so fucking classic. I never think to anagram this stuff and it's always there. Many of these things are always there. Fred told me it was the best interview he'd ever done. And I felt so good about that, and I think part of that is, he studied with Olson. And Duncan used to go to Vancouver every year. They used to chip. You heard the story. They used to chip in and get him a Greyhound bus pass from San Francisco to Vancouver. What a bus ride that must have been. And Duncan did it several times. And so I think coming from a similar school of poetry helps. Number one, and I'm open to that. And I don't come with any kind of axe to grind. So I think there's an affinity, and I think that helps. And I think it helps bring people out. My job is to get them to open as an interviewer. I stopped doing interviews with people who I don't want to interview many, many years ago. And I hope I never have to interview people I don't want to interview because it's no fun. But the thing, I want to go back to something that you might have mentioned it, and Tim called it the Fisher-Price, going up higher in a poem if you get stuck. McClure teased that, and he said, I want to do a workshop, going to do this, this, and this, and teach you a little known trick of Jack Kerouac's. And he called it alluvials, because it what washes down from upstream or from up the hill. A geological term, what washes down. So you go up a few lines, or sometimes you go to the beginning of the poem, and I do this all the time, and it's a fantastic technique. And then quite often you'll be like, oh yeah, there was something I did think about that I didn't write down, and it'll come back to you because you're tracing your own mind. And very organic too. So there's more I could say about it, but beautiful poem. It's poems. I like the. Thank you for leaving us with that other one. But we don't have to apologize for bringing people down, because I think the job of the poet is to make people be human. Allow people the experience of being human. So I don't think we have to ever. Of course, a half an hour of suicide poems or whatever would probably be too much. You may have to show your range after about 10 or 15 minutes of that. But I don't think we need to apologize for the content, especially when they're beautiful poems like the one you share, the one that's KJ shared. So thanks. All right, you get to choose.
I
I know it's tough, isn't it?
Susan.
There you go.
That's here, Susan.
Oh, hi, everyone. Nice to hear about the adventures you've been having and about the reading. And that's neat to see you again, Tim, and hear about attending a concert. That's cool. You're lucky. Nice. So yeah, Fred, listening to Fred and getting to know him a little bit better. That's so great. And I guess I didn't really realize his life and work, his run and his life is so place-based. It sounds like your community, Linda, him having your dad as a teacher and you all growing up together. I mean, you must have, because I think, yeah, you, of course, if that was your dad, you grew up there too, unless you were from a different family and you moved there later. No, that's so interesting. And then I know, Linda, you talked about trips to Mexico before with Fred and of course your spouses and things.
With George.
That's so interesting. That's here that I thought, oh, well, when you were talking, Linda, here we are studying all these other people. We should be studying you. We should be studying you and your work. Maybe as the next assignment, no, as the next upcoming assignments. See, I don't know. That might be too embarrassing for you, but to listen to people talk about your work, but that's so super interesting. And then Fred, so I listened to Fred's interview, Paul's interview with Fred, and then I think the same evening was looking up what was online for Fred's poetry, and looked at an old chat book, that the PDF of it online, and it was all about the mountain, and that's a theme I've been writing about or subject I've been writing about. Well, it's always kind of you see your idea isn't like super original. It's like all these other people have written about the mountain.
No
Whatever.
ideas. No ideas are original. So
I know, but
stop. Just stop.
you like to sort of think it is.
Stop.
So yeah, so then it was cool to imagine Fred. I think he mentioned he worked as a timber cruiser. And then that was so neat to imagine him, sort of not running, but walking through the woods, and probably in sort of a dappled light, maybe in the summer months. And then his poems really reminded me of that sort of environment of forest floor. I mean, he could have been timber cruising on the edge of a clear cut and not in the dappled light, but somehow his the way the poems looked And the way the images came was somehow like walking in a forest with dappled light coming, and that light would be sort of on your body, and you'd be looking around, so you'd be sort of in it. And then yeah, so that's the experience I had. Then reading a bunch of his work, I think I read 2 little chapbooks that were with the PDFs. I don't know if those were the links that Paul had, or maybe just I saw those separately. And yeah, and I think Fred talked about music, and maybe you don't really have to understand Olson, or you don't really have to understand a poem, but appreciating or just being in the music of a line or a poem or just of an image, that's always what you can come back to with poems. And that was just great. And I enjoyed looking at the Paul Celan translations, and the German is so different from what the English sounds like. The English is more beautiful than musically than how it sounds in German, with the German clunkiness of the German clunky language. I think the English sounds more musical or beautiful. Anyway, no, well, that's what it seems like. And that's so interesting too, to think about, like, translations. What are they? And that's what we do as poets. We translate what's around us, and that's a definite translation always of feelings and what we see and things, memories. It's interesting to get into the work and read work. I would not, if it weren't for this class or this poetics lab, I would never read Fred Waugh's work at all on my own. I don't think I would come across it. I'd never heard of him before. So that's so super exciting. And also Paul Celan, I've read his work, but I guess I hadn't seen it sort of like that before, in a very thin long line. Somehow that doesn't stick out. I've seen other translations, like by Tom Clark, and they seemed like they were chunkier, but I could be wrong. Anyway. Oh, and pick someone else to go. Laura, did you speak yet?
Wait. Do you have something you'd like to share with people?
I have a short poem
Yes.
that I wrote about my walk again. It's called Mountain, Charms, Trinkets. How will I remember this time? With trinkets, the color of the sky's crunchy feet, her voice in my head, calling my name, calling. I hear the sound of milk in my throat. This time, an old cabinet burns near the thick oaks. Its greasy smoke goes straight up in front of the mountain, like cedar, but not cedar at all.
Far out. What a great check-in. It's so good to see you in a good, bubbly mood like this. Fantastic. And your work is original. Come on. What was the crunchy sky and the milk in your throat and this other stuff? That's fucking gorgeous. Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
Ja, gern. Und du sprichst du Deutsch?
I just know Sprechen Sie Deutsch. All the German I learned from Hogan's Heroes, I have to tell you.
Oh,
so.
yeah.
Klink.
Colonel Klink. We watched that show religiously.
Oh my God, we did too.
Hogan was so cute. We wanted him.
Oh, well, you know, I have to tell you something about Bob Crane, but maybe later. Maybe later. By the way, Fred Waugh, look at this. This is a weapon. Look at it. Look at that.
Wow.
Scree, just in case you didn't get enough Fred Waugh. It's possible to get more. So yeah, there is Music at the Heart of Thinking right over there. This is Scree, the simple. Fred Waugh, by the way, is one of our featured poets tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. Founding supporters reading right here in this very Zoom room, 6 o'clock tomorrow night, sort of an Imbolc / Lunar New Year reading. And, you know, that's
Are
going to
you
be
sending
fantastic.
links around?
Same link, same one that got you here.
Okay.
It's going out to the list. If you subscribe to the CPL list, it went out this morning.
Oh,
It went out this
No.
morning, and will go out again tomorrow at 5.
Okay.
I programmed it. So,
Okay.
Susan, you have such high poetry IQ. I mean that, you know? And you find yourself in circles like Ed Dorn and now Fred Waugh and others like that. I mean, come on. You belong in that group. You have to trust that. And the German, by the way, I think is fantastic. I wish I knew more than, you know, sprechen Sie Deutsch and Dummkopf and Nein and the other words, because, you know, you can now look at Celan in the original language and say, hey, wait a second, what about this? You know, that's a gift to have a second language. I don't even speak my mom's language, Spanish, except for the most vulgar things that involve butter, which I won't get into right here. So, you know, have faith in yourself. I've got a couple more comments before I allow you to pick the next person. Thank you for your appreciation of me bringing Fred Waugh to the group, because when I started doing my graduate work, Michael McClure said, don't just stick with American poets. You have to go outside, at least go outside, you know, at least go outside of the country and find other people writing projectively. And I found Jose Kozer and I found George Bowery, and through him, the Tisch poets, and developed incredible friendships, I think, with George and Daphne Marlett and others, and then meeting Adelia. So it's been an incredible gift in my life to reach out in those two different directions. It's totally enriched it. And McClure was absolutely spot on with that. So, you know, it makes me a little teary-eyed when you show your appreciation for people like Fred Waugh, because, you know, Americans ignore Canada. You know, it's that cold, barren place. I've shared that Jim Carrey bit about Canada, which is just so classic. It's so classic. It makes me cry when I watch it. Mountains, according to a Tibetan Bön teacher, a self-professed Tibetan Bön lineage holder, and Clayoquot Island, Clayoquot Sound, Wickinnich Island, he said that mountains are repositories of all the information there is in a culture. Mountains take it in. They're like libraries, right? So how can we begin to access that information? How can we get to the level of knowing? And I think poetry is one crack at it. Maybe it's not like science where we can get a scientific approach, but we can get a poem out of it. And so you're connecting yourself to the mountain is a good move. And, you know, Olson talks about secrets that objects share. And I think the mountain is a good object to try and get some secrets from. Olson also said in that essay, all the original thoughts, he was paraphrasing Confucius. All the original thoughts that a man is capable of can be written on the back of a postage stamp, is what he said. Of course, he was talking about men, so maybe that was gender specific. I don't know. And then the last about, you know, Fred running through Fred Waugh running through the forest in dappled light. Robert Bly did the same thing, except Robert Bly was naked, and there were drums going, and they were reading mythopoetic poetry. That's just a slight difference. Okay, that's my last comment. You may choose and choose wisely. And thank you for that fantastic check-in and beautiful poem.
Oh, thanks. Oh, I hope I don't choose the wrong person.
It can be done.
Laura,
It can all go
Laura,
to.
is it you?
Oh, yeah. No, you didn't do that.
Thanks, Susan. Okay, so I'm in Portland, Oregon. Like Bhakti.
You should say hi. He's on Southeast Henderson.
Okay. Cool.
I'll put her number in the chat.
Okay. I'm visiting my dear friend. I've been up here for a few days, and we've been doing some thinking about our futures and vision and purpose. So in thinking about all of that, I've been focused on those two things in doing our readings too, vision and purpose. And just like mightily impressed by the poets that we're studying and their vision and purposes. For example, I wrote some notes. Basho was struggling to achieve a resonance between the fleeting moment and the eternal, between the instant of awareness and the vast, endless void of Zen. That's a pretty cool purpose. Then we've got a quote also in that Basho piece, the goal of perfect sincerity. This is from Confucius. Only the one who achieves perfect sincerity under heaven may discover one's true nature. One who accomplishes this participates fully in the transformation of heaven and earth, and being fully human becomes with them a third thing. So I wrote that one. And then in that piece about Bly, the purpose that author finds in his work is he had a project of healing the individual and society through poetry. He provided a guide for turning our hardest feelings into poetry and then into spirit. And then as I was listening to you, Paul, I wrote down some of the things you said. Poetry, music changes your consciousness. Isn't that enough? Does it deliver transcendence? Does it deliver a transfer of energy? So all inspiring and getting me to think more deeply about what in my poetry practice is purposeful. What is my vision for my poetry practice? What rituals am I building to try to access that bigger picture? So here I'll share my little piece that I wrote in response to the exercise. So I went on a walk around Oregon, slowly walking and noticing based on the Ingrid exercise. I'll share screen. Okay, notice, Portland, Oregon. Beauty is a defiance of authority, William Carlos Williams. Stop, the stop sign says. All over its face are moss starts. Feeding on what? Numerous as the little birds in their sweet spot near the feeder, running at it up a rock face, tweeting from a swaying branch above. There is a tree like a metal nutcracker upside down, the head planted, the two legs turning in at the knees, bow-legged the rest of the way up. Geese honk through, knowing what they are doing, snaking through the sky, informing and reforming trails, wing beats small, tight. A mini forest of spores is growing on a rock ledge, each a tall, pale, green megaphone that might shout to the geese, "Shut off that Judy box, I can't hear myself a speechin'," but instead just be beauty and defiance of anyone's notice. That's I picked a Yellowstone Sam. That's kind of silly, but anyway, that's the exercise.
Can you put the poem back up?
Yeah.
Yosemite Sam.
Yosemite Sam.
My easiest home. Fucking Yosemite Sam. Unbelievable. It's so funny. I'm looking for a William Carlos Williams poem. Collected later poems maybe. Because there's almost like a shout out that you had to our it's like a callback of a William Carlos Williams poem. and it's going to take me a minute to find it, but something about the little sparrows hopping ingeniously on the pavement. Do you know that? Does anyone know that poem? I think it's called Pastoral, and the fact that you had little birds, I mean, you know, you could always kind of draw lines, but it felt to me like, it almost felt like you were alluding to Williams, and that would be cool if you did. And if not, maybe he was coming through your poem because you're at least studying him or whatever. All right, I can't find it easily, but there's a poem, a beautiful poem, and I will look for that by William Carlos Williams. You know, you're in a huge transition in your life. So what it is an opportunity. It's a huge window. And the fact that you're taking time to get away is a beautiful self-care thing that, you know, people should take a note of. And to go to Portland too, what a great town. I love it so much. They have this artisanal gin. I think it's called Aria or something like that. And Jason Worth, who's on my board of directors, is like, his Zen teacher goes down to Portland to buy a case of this stuff. Now we know the secret of Zen, it's gin. So when Bhakti was down in Portland last time, she's like, I'm going to get Jason and Elizabeth a bottle of this gin. Now, I don't drink gin, and I don't recommend it for others too. I think it's horrible to put in your body. However, people feel different. Many people feel differently about gin. So you may want to look into that gin. I think it's called Aria, but you know what? If you text Bhakti, she will know for sure.
Okay.
Put her number in the chat. Now, your recognition of this opportunity for transition for you, the exercise that I'm going to deploy for the workshop materials is going to be so perfect for you. I think it's good. I think it's for everybody. I mean, obviously, I think it's going to be good for everybody, but how you describe what you're going through and what you're considering is absolutely fantastic. And your summation of the life purpose of all these people, you know, the instant and the eternal. If you get the instant down, chances are you'll have a better chance of being eternal, because that's what Basho was doing. He was getting the moment, and guess what? We're still reading him, what, 500 years later or whatever it is, 400 years later? That tells you something. So beautiful. And I love also the Williams-esque sort of indented triadic, well, they're not all triads, but that indentation reminds me very much of Asphodel, that greeny flower. Do you know that poem, Asphodel? That greeny, you know that?
I think I read it.
Oh my God, well worth reading. I should probably find a PDF and put it in as a signed reading, but beautiful. Did I have anything? Go ahead.
I'm done. I'm
You're
good.
done. All right. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Self-care. That's beautiful. Who's next, Laura?
Anne.
Me. Oh yeah, well, it's good that I'm at the end, because I'm sort of like Tim today. I was hijacked by editing jobs. So yeah, and most of what I had to say about the reading also has been said, but I'm just going to look at my notes of Fred Waugh. I love that quote, Paul. That seems to keep jumping up. Irritable reaching after facts and reason. Coleridge. Where does that come from?
Keats, negative capability.
Oh, Keats. Why did I have Coleridge written down? Okay.
Well,
so,
that's sort of that era, romantic.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking of Keats, quick interjection. Has anyone heard the Marianne Faithfull on that playlist reciting Keats? Has that come up? Is anyone's listening to it? Oh my God, it's so fantastic. Marianne Faithfull, that voice. Holy shit. Okay, go ahead.
I have that tape actually. A friend of mine sent me, so I think I've heard it. I have it in my car. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I kept wishing that I could see his words on paper just to see how he actually puts the words on paper, how much white space there was and that kind of thing.
For Fred?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get it.
Normally I would Google it, but I was listening to it like really late at night and that sort of thing. I thought it was just amazing how he was in the perfect place at the perfect time as a young poet, you know, and able to learn directly from all those people, Charles Olson and Denise Levertov and Robin Blazer, and the list just kept going on and on and on. And being in Buffalo, and you know, that was just extraordinary. I loved his lines that he feels safer in the improvisatory, and his dread of poems where you know how it's going to end. And also when he talked about having been a trumpet player and really questioning, you know, really what's the difference? Why do we really even ask what a poem means? Because we don't ask what a jazz improvisation means. So there was just a lot as I was listening that I really kind of thought about. And with the Bosch show, there was I loved the moon and sun are travelers through eternity. Even the years wander on, whether drifting through life on a boat or climbing towards old age, leading a horse. Each day is a journey, and the journey itself is home. Really beautiful. I'm not really on a journey right now because of COVID. It seems like our journeys have all been cut short, but I have taken some really interesting journeys in recent years. I went to Argentina and I went to Greece and I went to Australia, and I actually kept diaries the whole time. And so what I want to do is I want to go back into those diaries and see what kind of poem journals I actually kept that I haven't really even looked at for years. So I'm going to do that when I've finished working with this guy I'm doing this editing for. And I guess that's it. I looked at the Bly healing, and I thought it was just interesting that he believes in, you know, speaking directly from his unconscious with these Latin American inspired sentences from his surreal ones from his subconscious, and then he like edits them like crazy. And I thought that was interesting.
It is interesting.
Nothing
isn't
wrong
it?
with it, but interesting.
Well, I mean, you know, it's one thing to tweak a poem, but to constantly revise and revise and revise and revise them, you know, that's more like what was that Jack Klugman TV show where he was a medical examiner? Quincy? That feels more like Quincy work than it does poetry. After a while, leave the fucking thing alone. Come on. It was who you were at that moment, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
unless you got, like, for example, we're in Cascadian Zen, we saw this beautiful old poem about northern BC by George Stanley, and in it, he references an Indian boy. Well, there's no fucking way we're going to let that go, but we asked him, could we change that? And he said, yeah, change it to Gitsan. Gitsan. How do you pronounce that? Gitsan, boy? Fantastic. I mean, that's an edit that is, you know, is necessary, but that's not wholesale. Oh my God, I could have gotten closer to it. It's like, man, you got as close as you could. Let it go. That's the way I feel. But you know my story, so I don't have to keep going on about it. I found the old Fred Waugh music at the Heart of Thinking. You know, they're prose poems, so they look like prose on the page, right?
Okay.
And he also said in this very interesting 1 through 10, the following drunk writings are notes for talk. In the explication of these estranged pieces lies possible coherences for some sense of writing as a notation for thinking as feeling. The difficulty is literal and intentional. I'm wary of any attempt to make it easy.
Yeah.
Fred in 1980,
Mhm.
whatever. 1980 something.
What do you
Right.
think he meant by proprioception?
Well, proprioception refers to a famous essay by Charles Olson, and it's difficult. I mean, it's difficult as fuck to read this essay. But what proprioception is, and ask a nurse.
Well, I know, but in poetry.
Well, I mean, poetry, it's getting out of your head and using a body intelligence to inform the poems.
Okay.
I had a poem this past week from Flexible Mind, and it was that the notion that the song, our own song, whether that comes through as an actual song or as a poem, is comes from, and you don't want to say from the heart. That's cliched. It does come from somewhere inside. So I picked the large intestine. But I didn't call it. I called it the long intestine because there was song and long. So I just went with that. I'm like, I looked back later and I thought there was no such thing as the long intestine. Someone who's going to say, he doesn't even know his anatomy. He's calling it it's the large intestine, asshole. And it's like, fuck you. It's probably longer anyway.
It is.
Right? There you go.
Yeah.
So proprioception is a fascinating subject. I mean, when you get dizzy, you're like, you don't think, oh my God, my proprioception is only 60% of what it usually is. You're like, hang on to something, when you lose that sense of proprioception. For me, it's having the knee a problem the last week and going upstairs one at a time so I don't have to bend my knee. This is all part of our bodies being in space, which they are all the fucking time. It's how we exist. The only time we let that rest is at night. And then at that time, these weird fucking dreams are coming to us. So on some level, we can't even rest during that. My daughter having a dream about going to school and trying to run to my 9-year-old daughter this morning over buckwheat or over buttermilk pancakes. She's having this dream about school, and it's kind of she doesn't say panic dream, but it kind of is. And she runs to get to the next class, and she opens the door, and it's a whole nother school where she's still looking. That's my 9-year-old's dream. That's fantastic. Just the fact that her dad is talking to her about her dreams and considers that important material is potentially a life-changing thing for a kid, And so that's why I try and wake up and journal my dreams first thing in the morning. So very rich source. So proprioception, I can probably scan that. You might be able to find that online as well by Charles Olson. And you might get something out of it, but it's dense as fuck. And I can help you. Maybe we can even read it together. Or maybe I put it as part of the course material so we can have a discussion.
Okay.
Could you, go ahead, Linda.
I just wanted to say that at one, Ted's an amputee, so he has a prosthetic leg. And at one point he had a proprioceptive leg. And it was all computerized and stuff. He's very lucky he gets it through Department of Veterans Affairs. So, because they're expensive. But it had a tilt to the foot mechanism, because normally if your foot is always in one position, it's very easy for you to trip or to cause people to trip over you. And this way, like it basically knew where he was in space and adjusted to that just with these little infinitesimal things. It was quite amazing.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
I'm
So
thinking-
I meant to mention that when I was doing my check-in, that I really found the talk about proprioception really interesting,
Yeah.
because I remember when he had this leg.
Yeah. Remember Steve Austin, the $6 million man, the Bionic Man? My brother loved that show. And just a minute or two on the work, the editing work that you're doing that's preventing you from writing poems and that we're finding some resentment about. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, it's taking a lot of time. I didn't get any poetry done, and it actually blocks my poetry channels. I'm helping a young doctor write about 40 letters to different schools where he wants to become a resident, and he needs help writing the letters. And yeah, so I mean, I really have to get into this very different mindset, editing these letters, and He was sending, this goes on until around 2 in the morning because it just does. And it's been going
I
on. for-
noticed based on when you send emails, I noticed that. you're
Yeah,
on.
it's been going on for a couple of weeks. It affected my work last week too.
Mhm.
But anyway, it's going to finish today because today's his deadline. So it'll be over. He's paying me, so it's okay. I'm not doing this out of the goodness of my heart. Well, I do want him to get into a residency, so I do care. But anyway, yeah,
There's some hard goodness in the whole deal.
yeah.
Yeah. Before you decide who the next person is going to be,
My cat's come to visit.
there we go.
Yay.
Should I play the cat video? No.
Oh, the
Right.
cat. What didn't we say something about the cat walking into the room before? Yeah, we did.
Yes. Who
There.
was? The Tim had the cat. He
Yeah.
had the cat reference. I found the William Carlos Williams poem. Laura, this is for you more than anyone else. Pastoral. The little sparrows hop ingeniously about the pavement. And by the way, there's a call out to Canada in this poem, just to let you know. Call out to Ottawa, just to let you know. Pastoral. The little sparrows hop ingeniously about the pavement, quarreling with sharp voices over those things that interest them. But we who are wiser shut ourselves in on either hand, and no one knows whether we think good or evil. Meanwhile, the old man who goes about gathering dog lime walks in the gutter without looking up, and his tread is more majestic than that of the Episcopal minister approaching the pulpit of a Sunday. These things astonish me beyond words. So shout out to the poop picker uppers and bio break, and then we'll come back and Anne will choose the next participant. Let's take.
Who's left?
We've got Ingrid, we've got Skylar, we've got Carlton. So you have a 33% chance, people.
Okay.
So have your A game ready. Let's take at least 4 minutes. 4 minutes, 5:20.